now.
Do you
Uh,
want me to blur? Do you want me to blur my background? I'm just trying to see how I do it.
that's up to you, man. Either way.
Okay. Yeah. No, I'm sweet.
Cool. Hey there. So I'm Eddie Henry from Henry Homes, and I'm here with one of my clients, Elliot, over here. And he's going to be speaking about his experience working with me and the amazing deal that he's come across now. That's it's become. Elliot was actually my first client, my first investor, all the way back in late 2022. And yeah, it's everything's come full circle, and there's been a lot of good surprises along the way. So, Elliot, just let us know what your property journey was like before you started working with me. Had you been investing before, or?
Yeah. So I'd had one buy-to-let property before I met you. After I kind of purchased that, I went on a Samuel Leeds course, joined the academy, and then I think that's kind of where I got to meet people like yourself.
Amazing, amazing. And I know that during the with property, there's always different hurdles to come across, and I think with the one that we were looking at in Hartlepool, I believe there was a dispute with the land as well. It was a good surprise. Some land came with it. Do you want to speak about that briefly?
Yeah, it was probably the longest bridging purchase in history. It took about 7 or 8 months to actually get it over the line and get the keys, which was again a good learning curve, really. Probate sale, bit of the land that was already gifted and walled into the garden, wasn't owned by the owner that passed away. So then I took it upon myself to find um, the owners of the land that had gifted each end terrace a bit of land where they knocked down an adjacent row of terraces, which they were a little bit defensive with at first. They owned a few companies, so I was ringing a few companies asking for these people. Got there in the end, got them to sign a TR1 form. But then it wasn't as simple as signing it over to me. I had to go to the probate, which was the family, because it was a probate sale, and then to me, which took about 8 months. But we got there in the end.
Yeah, we got there, and it was a nice surprise anyway to have that bit of extra land as well on the title. How would you say your experience was working with myself and Pete? Pete's the builder that we work with, because you were investing remotely. And when it comes to remote investing, I always stress to people that it's important to work with the right people, because working with the wrong people can not just cost you a couple £100, but maybe thousands and thousands of pounds over what you need to pay.
Yeah, I no. To be fair, yourself and Pete were so helpful throughout. The entirety of everything. Probably didn't speak to you too much while the purchase was going on because didn't really need to. But day one, I didn't. Wasn't even at the property when we got the keys. Pete went to get them himself and started work straight away. So we kind of hit the ground running in terms of that, which was really helpful. And you were always on the end of the phone. It helpful that we set up a little group chat where everything, all the information needed and questions and queries were answered. So it ran really smoothly.
Amazing. And correct me if I'm wrong, along the process, we do our best. It's not a promise, but Pete managed to save you some money as well along the
He,
process.
he did, yeah. He because the price that he gave was 7 months old. He kind of stood by the pricing for that. I think a lot had happened in that time. Materials would have gone up, but he did his best to stick to the original quote. There were bits in the house that we could sell. We sold some old cast iron fireplaces that kind of added onto the budget. So he went above and beyond, if I'm honest, and he was kind of a diamond in it all, and he kind of really helped it along. And then with yourself as well, whenever I couldn't get a hold of him, because I know he was a busy guy and he had projects on, that I could just kind of touch base with you, and things were solved, within a few days.
Amazing. And although I wasn't too much involved in the exit of this contract you got with supported living, for this five-bed house that you purchased for the price of, I believe, 85,000, which I keep telling people, you're not going to find a price like that in town anymore. It's impossible. Um,
75, 75 we got it for in the end.
75.
75, I think we bought it for in the end. Correct me if I'm wrong, because we were gonna buy it for. I'll double check, but what happened is the original price was 85. We agree. I think then, when we had a valuation done from our bridger, they said it's not worth it's not worth 85, it's worth 75. So I went back and said, I'm not willing to pay over what the property was worth to the family. And then the valuer said it was worth 75. So we then, I can double check it, but we said, well, we can't pay over. We didn't have the budget, because we would have had to stump up anything over what they were willing to lend, which was 75% of the purchase price. So they were willing to lend us 56k when we paid after we paid our deposit. So if we would have had to pay another 5 or 10 grand out of our own pocket, which we didn't have really. And then the probate, the family agreed to that, so we ended up getting it for 75 in the end.
It gets better and better. And if you don't mind sharing, in terms of your rental income, I assumed on this five-bed property that you bought for 75k, on this supported living contract, you were making £2,000 per month, 24k per annum. But you tell me what the numbers were as a pleasant surprise.
Yeah, so again, being on the Samuel Leeds Academy network is a great thing, and met someone similar to yourself called Ross. Project was coming to a finish where we were starting to look to find tenants while all the snagging was getting done. He said there's social housing contracts available in the area, and they came around and they quoted for our house, which was a 5-bed HMO, but had a small box room, which was obviously too small for HMO standards. So they did class it as a 6-bed, I think, and they offered us £2,750 a month to rent the whole property over a 3-year fixed period, and that was a full repairing lease. So we had an independent inventory at the start. So there were guarantees that would get put back as it was, which basically everything was brand new. So it was a bit of a win-win, if I'm honest. It came at the right time. It probably bears what the house would achieve fully tenanted as well, and it was guaranteed. So I snapped his hand off for it, really.
And that is guaranteed rent, maintenance, and bills included.
Yeah, guaranteed rent, bills, everything included. So the only thing I need to look after is if the boiler breaks, or if there are any repairs needed. So I do take care of the maintenance side of things, but everything else is taken care of by the social housing contractor.
And in terms of the refinancing, before we hit record, you said that you had a 125 value on the table, but you obviously refinanced for other reasons at 110.
Yeah, so if we kept it as a HMO, we would have been able to achieve around 125,000 on the refinance, which would have been able to pull me out around about 35 to 40k, which would have been a really good return on investment. But because you went down the social housing route and they're housing vulnerable people or that's what's classed as vulnerable tenants with asylum seekers. The lender didn't want us to do that, so we had to go with another lender who was open to it. And then we had a valuation with them, and it kind of got downvalued, even though the property hadn't changed, to 110. So we lost effectively about 15k on our refinance pullout. But I kind of weighed all that up even beforehand, if it got downvalued, purely because of just the rental that it achieves, and that I'll be able to save a hell of a lot more doing it that way. And that money is still tied up in the house, but it's not really going anywhere. It's still in equity, and the house is cash flowing at a pretty high yield.
Amazing. So if we just go through the numbers, so 75k purchase for a 5-bed house at the time, revalued
Yeah.
that's about 110, and making 33,000 pounds per annum.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Just for transparency, before I went full-time in property, I was actually making about 30,000. So right now you're earning more than what I was earning in my previous job. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's to be honest, it was a bit mind blowing, if I'm honest. And because we're still in our bridge at the moment while we refinance, we paid all of our interest up with the bridge as it gets rolled up at the start. So actually, that house is netting me £2,750 at the minute, and we signed that contract with them in December. So it has been cash flowing since December of that amount. So even though we've had a bit of a down value, and we may be going over the time scale on our bridge, which will probably incur costs, it all gets outweighed by the amount that the house is achieving per month. So when we get over this little hump and get our refinance, it's just kind of going to kickstart me saving and moving on to the next property.
Amazing. And final thoughts, could you share for, I know there are going to be other clients and potential investors watching this, why is it so important, especially remote investing in an area that you may not be familiar with and you don't live in? Why is it so important to do so, really? Why would you say it's so important? And could you, yeah, why would you say it's so important?
Yeah, I think when you're going to be investing remotely, you've got to make sure that you're buying deals off people you trust. I think when we went down to, when we saw it, when Elliot sent the videos through and sent the figures through, the numbers were really good, and they turned out to be a lot better in the end in terms of the rental yield. But going back to buying deals and investing remotely is definitely trusting who you're buying off. And with Ellie coming from the Samuel Leeds Academy and myself being on that, I trusted him because people have paid for their education and are serious about doing it. So that trust was kind of already there. It's funny though, I didn't actually realize I was your first your first investor. So but yeah, we got to meet at a networking event, one of the Samuel Leeds networking events as well, didn't we, a few months later. So but no, I would just say that trust is the biggest thing. Trusting in Ellie to project manage, and trusting in Pete to get the job done, and the schedule of works to be met. So it's really important.
Amazing. And would you say, again, this is not would you say you would have been able to get to this point without that network and being around the right people?
No, definitely not. I think meeting people like yourself and other investors, that network, I think is it. I believe that the term that your net worth is your network. So, and meeting people like yourself in the Samuel Leeds Academy has helped me, tenfold. So I'm pretty sure there's not many properties around that are going to cost you 75k, putting around 45k in, and then yielding at just over 30 grand a year. So no, I thank you for that.
Amazing. Well, appreciate it so much, Elliot. And yeah, I hope and believe that that will be the first of, all different kind of projects that we can do together.
Yeah, mate. Yeah, hopefully so.